So if you think what we've done up until now is redneck, this is going to take the cake. Sick. All right, welcome back to the Burt Not Bot YouTube channel. Today we are out at Spragen Built Custom Shop to continue working on this truck. And Adam has made a lot of progress on the back of this thing. Check this out. So the last time you guys saw this thing, it did not look like this. The batteries were here, the compressors and stuff were here, the tank was up there, the fuel tank was up there half under the cab, and there was no lift pump. But now, Adam's got a nice new cross member built in. We had to raise the deck of the truck just a little bit to clear the fittings on that fuel tank. It's a new fuel tank, new cross member. The Airlift is all out here now, which is really nice, and it's all on one side. It looks really, really good. That's gonna be nice to wire. A lot more space under here too, surprisingly. So I am excited about that. Right now we're gonna focus. We're gonna get the rear chassis harness in there, and I need to lay out the Airlift system, the wiring harness that came with that thing alongside mine, so I have to figure out kind of how to integrate it into mine. And then the Air Dog, which is the lift pumps for the fuel system. I have 2 wires for that around here over on the table that I need to integrate into that harness as well. So let's get to work. All right, so the rear harness is back in, and everything up front is fine. I got a breakout right here. I got to move the stroke sensors up just a little bit. They're like right here. Those 2 wires there go to the lift pump. We'll talk about that more in a second. That's that. Everything jumps out of the frame rail down there and starts to come up alongside that box rail. The white wire hanging out is the ground. This branch is the left rear and right rear stroke sensors. Then it comes up along the inside of that stiffening beam and runs along to where the junctions are there underneath that cross member. Then these connectors aren't mounted yet, but there's the license plate connector. Down there is the left side tail lights and the bumper rail lights. And then the 7-pin is dangling right there, and the right side tail lights over here. Now this connector goes to the air ride control box. And there must be a lot of junctions in here because this is like a 16-pin connector, and there's definitely more than 16 wires coming out of that. So I need to cut this harness up. So upon further investigation, I think I have this ride height control harness figured out. But knowing what I know about how it was put in that truck, I do have some confusion. So the module end of this thing really isn't that complicated. We've got 4 ride height sensor inputs and our 5-volt sensor power. The ground is coming out of that junction there. This ground is also going to that same junction, and then we have constant power and switched power underneath. This is where the confusion kind of starts. So on top, that wire is called compressor signal, and then on the bottom, this is called compressor 2 signal, which is interesting because compressor signal runs into this big relay here that looks like it's capable of running one of those compressors. And then compressor 2 runs over here and had this lead on it. So I'm not exactly sure what the point of this is, because I think both compressors were being run off this one relay. Now, I would like to be sure that this has the same logic as this. It just only runs 2 compressors when they're needed. And then I'll just buy another one of these and have it wired up to run the second compressor. But the way this is currently set up, it's not really possible. So considering I am unsure, we need to do an experiment. I have my trusty 30 amp power supply right there, hooked up to the leads of one pump. What we're going to do, so when I turn the power supply on, I am going to cap the end of this as hard as I can to try and put the pump under as much load as possible, and we're going to watch how many amps it draws. All right, let's go ahead and turn this puppy on. It looks like with no load, it's drawing about 7.5 amps, but it'll almost never not be under a load. So I'm going to cap the end of this right here, see what it does. So, I don't know if you saw that or not, but it looks like we got up to just shy of about 20 amps. So knowing that each compressor draws just under 20 amps at full load, gives us a 40 amp draw. We can get away with using just this relay because it is rated for 50 amps on the normally open contact and 30 amps on the normally closed. However, what kind of scares me a little bit is this is the feed wire. That's 10 gauge. I don't know that I want to run 40 amps through a 10 gauge. So I may have to order another one of these and build a second circuit for the other compressor. Now the good news is, if we don't use this compressor 2 signal, we can split the compressor signal across both of those compressors, or both of those relays, and just run them both off the same signal. But it would be nice if only one ran when needed and the other ran, you know, when needed. So I guess what that means for this harness is I don't really need any of that. I can just kind of build a sub harness with 2 leads coming out of it that go to these relays and build the compressors their own harness. And I think that's what we're going to do. But we got to make up our mind quick here because we got to keep moving. So we're going to start snipping some wires and start laying this out because, I mean, standing here speculating and doing nothing isn't going to do us any good. All right, so here's what I'm thinking for this control box. So the box is here. We have all the wires coming out here along with the compressor relay signals to turn the compressors on. Those will come to here. I'm going to unwrap this section here and bring the ground for this box out as well, and the USB. They will both come out here and go to a ground somewhere in this area. Then continuing on will be the USB, which will remain undisturbed throughout the harness. The ride height sensor's 4 inputs, their power, and their ground will run through as well. Then we'll have switched power and constant power as well. So we're going to have 8 wires coming to a connector right here. The proper thing to do, considering that I have an unbroken USB and a connector upstream, is going to be to solder all of these wires together to the wires that are in my harness currently, because none of the wires coming out of this control box are long enough to get where they need to go. I could put a connector in there, but having a connector just randomly in the middle of a harness is kind of weird. So we are going to do some soldering on those 8 wires to get them into the rear chassis harness going forward where they need to go. I'm not a huge fan of soldering solders for PCBs and copper pipe, if you ask me, but unfortunately in this situation, it makes the most sense. So that's what we are going to do here. All right, so this is where we're sitting currently. I think running this harness slightly too long is probably the best bet because it is going to be by far the most flexible thing in this area. Eventually, these compressor feed lines will be somewhere in this general vicinity because they're going to be coming out of a T-fitting off the tank. So that being long enough to dodge that will be ideal. And then coming out of the T-fitting here will be a water air separator. Then out of it, a 90 with an air line coming into the feed on the control box. So that's it for the air feed. Then from there, unfortunately, these are the front left and front right. So they'll have to come out and head forward. And then right underneath this connector are the right rear and right left. They're gonna have to go this way, so we gotta figure out how to make that look good, which sucks. I was not looking forward to this part of the project, but it has actually been a little bit easier than I thought it would be. Now for the rest of the wires, right between those two zip ties is where we're gonna make the cut and start soldering. So got some slack pulled into this just to make sure that we have enough to solder. So all the colored wire going that way will disappear and all the white wire going this way will disappear. There'll be one solder joint right in the center there with the USB running along the rest of the harness. Profit. So as much of a blast as I've been having climbing all over this truck, trying to get all this stuff organized, what I'm gonna do now is just throw a couple more zip ties on that stuff to make sure the length stays exactly where I need it, and then pull this whole thing right back out of here. Isn't that about the way that goes? Came over here with a nice tidy harness and now I'm left with this. All right, this area is starting to fill up a little bit, but it's looking good. Got the feed off the tank, and with these lines just sort of started in there. They're not even touching it, so this is all floating in space. It looks really nice. I'm currently getting the tank mounted, and the rear harness is laid out. It's ready to go back and get worked on. And this is something I wanted to show you. That is the same thing as that. So I'm waiting on the zip clips right now to get it mounted. It'll actually reuse those holes along the top there, and then we might have to make another one here. And maybe, depending on what happens when it gets on the truck, this might be the last one, but we might put another one right here. All right, so we have the rear chassis harness back at the house. It's on the table and it's unfinished, and we need to change that. Now, it looks like we have a long way to go. We really don't. There is a little bit of work left to do here, but here's what we have to do. This is why it's down here. So in order to even start, we have to start right here. This is where I had the stroke sensors broken out previously, and unfortunately, they need to break out right here. So, not a big deal. Also, when we do this, we need to make sure that we have the power for the fuel lift pumps and the USB for the air ride controller in there as well. And also, we have to run a switched power and constant power for the air ride controller up through there as well. Then moving back here, we're actually going to cut both harnesses right here. What we have to do, all of these twisted trios have a power ground signal. The signals need tied into their proper wire here, the green, white, green, black, yellow, white, yellow, black. Then we need to take all of their grounds and bundle them together into a splice that's going to run up the harness and then hang a UE and come out and go to ground with these guys. Power, same thing, except they get their power from here. So that'll get cut and run into a splice there. And that means this section of the harness will be done aside from these guys. We need to get it back in the truck, cut these to length, and then ground them. Then the gray wires here will be running up to the compressor control relays to turn them on and off. Then once we get all the wires running in and out of here the way we need, and the rest of them laid out up along this branch here, we can tape this whole thing up and start putting connectors on the end of it down there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Let's do it. Well, that made my back hurt, but it looks nice. Naturally, ran out of tape 1 foot before I'm done there. This harness is pretty well close to done, at least until it goes into the truck. There's a couple of things to tie up. This looks really nice and I'm really happy with it. Just a little bit further, then we're done with this one. All right, so I haven't recorded every single thing I've done in the last couple of days on this harness. But what I can tell you is it is as done as it can possibly be on this table. So maybe a day or two, we're gonna go out there and basically get this thing completely and fully tied in. Now, this is by no means the most complicated harness I've ever built, but it's definitely the longest. This thing is 18 feet from tip to tail. And I gotta be honest, I'm really happy with the way it came out, and I can't wait to go out there and get it laid out on the truck. So we're gonna roll this thing up, get it out on the truck, get a couple of things plugged in just to lay it out, and then in the next couple of days when those parts show up, we will have what we need to get this thing locked down and finalized. All right, we are back out here with the truck, and I'm gonna give you a short explanation, and then we are finishing this rear chassis harness. We're getting it done. Adam's got the engine in and the diesel conversion specialist harness on it. My harness is in. He put it in some spots here. He kind of zip tied everything together, which is fine, but I have these guys, so it may stay zip tied here, but I'm going to actually mount it along the frame rail down there, and then we'll see what it looks like through here. But we'll kind of figure that out as we go. But my main goal is to get the harness mounted along this frame rail, get this hooked up, and then we got to drill holes through all of this back here to get it mounted up. And then I know those two connectors, I've been talking about this for like 2 videos now. I have the dual harness connectors for those 2 connectors that are hanging down there because they're just going to have to hang. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it's got to go. Stroke sensors and stuff, they'll get mounted too. Getting the drill in there might be a little difficult, but we'll figure it out. And then we got to mount along the cross member there. So that should generally cover what we're trying to do here to get this finished up. But when I say this finished up, I specifically mean the rear chassis harness. We still have to do basically all of this. That's the next video. Let's get to work. So the rear harness is in. Didn't get quite as far as I was hoping I would tonight, but it is looking really good. Max, he's on to something. All right, so we've got the... Max, that was the sound of your own ears flapping. Come here. Come here. Come here. Breathe. Breathe. Good boy. Nice boy. All right, so we've got the header here, and then everything, we're going to flip you upside down, but everything's held in with these Christmas tree clips here, here, here. This area looks really good above the exhaust. These are all existing holes too on this frame rail here. Then through the back side in the C channel, we did have to drill some new holes to kind of keep it away from some sharp edges. That all turned out nice. And cross member looks good there. There's another one there. And then the last one over there next to the air ride dryer. Then as far as going back, kind of the same thing in the scene channel here. We got one on the box rail there. Then it comes up along the stiffening beam. Everything's attached there. License plate lights on. And then the rear bumper beam, the running lights are on there as well. And then finally, I got those dual connector mounts in, because those guys are kind of just going to have to hang because of the harness out of the light's a little too short, but it's all right. They're meant for that. All right, trailer connector's back in. And got the shrink wrap on it. Come on now. We're not going to focus. That's shrunk and it says 7-pin trailer connector. And it is ready to never have a trailer hooked up to it. Next up, rear stroke sensors. Got the grounds in. That one's for the ride height mainly. And then we've got the ground for the rear chassis harness there. The stroke sensors are in, they look really nice. And then the 7-pin trailer connector down there is done as well. So that, other than the fact that I forgot my eyelets, pretty much concludes the rear chassis harness aside from the little ride height work. But we're going to get the power supply out, hook it up to chassis ground, and see if all this stuff works from the front of the truck where the connectors are. So let's give it a try. Here's hoping I wired everything right. We'll find out, but we'll find out with this power supply before we find out with the truck itself. This is the way to do it. A lot of people keep asking me what power supply I'm using. This thing's called a TechPower and it's a 30 amp. It's like $150. I think they go by like a B-Tech now, but you can afford to get one of these, I would. It's a really handy tool.
Yep.
Everything on, all 4 lights up top in the bumper rail?
Yep.
Awesome. Turns, brake lights.
Okay.
On just the right side?
Yep.
And then it should pulse with
yep.
the signals on. Brake turn.
Yep.
And pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Reverse lights should be all 4 white lights?
Yep.
Reverse, brake, turn, run. That's all the lights back there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
You got it all.
It all works. Perfect. All right, so I've got the power supply up on the front tire here, grounded right to just a random bare metal spot, which is perfect. The more random, the better. And then I've got a pin going into the running lights in that DTP connector there. We're currently drawing 0.9 amps to power the running lights on the entire rear end of the truck. Boy, they look good. Looks really nice. The ones on the bumper are actually really bright, so that's nice.